After being one of the worst teams in the NFL last season, the New Orleans Saints have not gotten any better. They drafted Tyler Shuff in the NFL draft, and I really don't think he's going to do very well at all during his first NFL season. Realistically, this is going to be a very, very bad year for the Saints with just no players really that are going to be able to make enough impact in order for them to win major games. It's not to say they don't have some good players. They have a Chris Olave who's struggled with concussions the past few seasons. He'll be matching up against another former Ohio State wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. in week 1 against the Cardinals. We're actually pretty high on this Arizona team. We do think they're going to be one of the better teams in the NFC West, maybe even compete with the Rams for the division title. I think that the Cardinals are going to be pretty solid. They have a very solid offense. Just there's no way that the Saints are going to win this game week 1, even though they're at home. The Cardinals are a significantly better team.
Following week against the 49ers is kind of a similar situation. The amount of talent that the 49ers have on this team, assuming they're all healthy, which they should be by week 2 of the season, is just so much greater than what the Saints have. You have Brock Purdy, who just got paid this offseason, Christian McCaffrey coming off of his injury, but hopefully still healthy going into this season. A wide receiver room that, while dealing with some issues wanting new contracts or wanting out of the organization, are still very solid with Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, not to mention having probably the best tight end in the NFL right now in George Kittle, along with a solid offensive line. And then defensively, you got Fred Warner, you got Nick Bosa, some of the best defensive players in the league. There's really no scenario where I see the 49ers losing this game to the Saints. Yes, it is a home game for the Saints, and the Superdome is one of the harder places to play in. But like Jonah was saying, Tyler Shuff, I don't think is going to make an immediate impact for the Saints here. And if for whatever reason he's not the starter to begin the year, Spencer Rattler was not too successful last year either, so I don't think the Saints really have a chance. Their defense would be the only thing that keeps them in these games, but this defense is basically the same from last year, and they were one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So I don't see how the Saints would be able to pull off a win here. So the 49ers get the win, dropping the Saints to 0-2. Before their first road trip of the year, but the third NFC West team they have to play this season, the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seahawks are going to be in an interesting spot this year. They moved on from Geno Smith after he had very successful years as the Seahawks quarterback, and they are bringing in Sam Darnold after putting up MVP caliber numbers in Minnesota last season, kind of revitalizing his career. But now he's going under center behind one of the worst offensive lines from last season. And while the Seahawks did try to address some of their concerns, taking the number one overall offensive guard in the draft last year, I don't know how much better it actually will get. We'll have to see once the season starts to take shape and we see how this offensive line gels. But the Seahawks still have plenty of playmakers for Sam Darnold. Jackson Smith-Njigba is coming off his best season in the NFL. They got Cooper Kupp during the offseason, who is a former Triple Crown winner. And while he has dealt with injuries, he doesn't have to be that wide receiver one in Seattle. And they have Kenneth Walker coming back from injury in the backfield. So this offense is going to be good. Defensively, they really went after some really athletic guys in the NFL draft, including Nick Emenawari at the safety position. I do think overall the Seattle's team is going to be fairly decent. They're probably going to regress a little bit from last season. I think they will probably be the third or fourth team in the NFC West this season behind the Rams and the Cardinals for sure. And the 49ers, it's going to be kind of up in the air. But I do think they are still the better team compared to the Saints here. Throw in the fact that it is a home game for the Seahawks and they have one of the best home field atmospheres in the country. I don't see how the Saints and this offense are going to be able to get anything done in Seattle. So they're going to drop their third game in a row here.
Then it's a road trip to face the Buffalo Bills, and the schedule's just getting even more difficult. The Bills are a really, really good team, going to be one of the best teams in the NFL again this season. You have the reigning MVP, as controversial as it may have been, in Josh Allen. He doesn't have as good of wide receivers this season, but I really don't think it's going to matter that much. Allen is still a great quarterback. The Bills still have a very solid defense. They'll be the favorites in the AFC East once again, and by far a better team than the Saints. And then it's the first game that the Saints are really going to have a chance in against the New York Giants. The Giants are going to have quite the committee in the quarterback room, likely going to be Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback, and then potentially we could see Jameis Winston at some point. We could see their first round draft pick, Jackson Dart, at some point. It's going to be really interesting, and it makes the Giants a tough team to predict because we really don't know who will be the starting quarterback later on in the season at these points. But we do think they're going to have a relatively decent year, at least in comparison to past seasons. They have some very talented skill position players, and they're slowly rebuilding, but they need to find that franchise quarterback. They're hoping Jackson Dart's going to be the guy. They just don't want to throw him into the fire right away. I think the Giants do have the ability to win this game on the road. It'll be one of the closest games the Saints have played this point in the season, but we are going to take the New York Giants to win this one, dropping the Saints to 0-5.
The big reason there is that I think this Giants defense is actually going to be fairly decent next year. You already have Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence on your defensive line who have been solid in their NFL careers. Dexter Lawrence might be the best defensive tackle in the NFL, only second to Chris Jones. But now you're throwing in the fact that you are bringing in Abdul Carter, your number 3 overall pick in the NFL draft. This pass rush is going to be, I would say, one of the best in the NFL going into next year with the amount of guys they have in this team. The concern is the secondary, but I do think against an offensive line that is either aging for the Saints or dealing with bringing in new players such as Kelvin Banks, who they drafted this year, there's going to be some issues and some growing pains with this offensive line. So I do think that the Giants defense can take advantage of that, and then Malik Neighbors can just go to work on this Saints secondary. The following week, they take on the New England Patriots, and the Patriots, I think, are a team that might surprise some people this year and actually be a lot better than some people might think. I think they have a good chance to be the second best team in the AFC East behind the Bills because they are the juggernauts in the AFC. But this Patriots team started to play very well when Drake May came into the starting quarterback position after starting the year off on the bench. And they have just gotten a lot better over this offseason. They got Stephon Diggs to be the wide receiver 1. And while he is not the same wide receiver he once was, he's still going to be the best weapon Drake May has had up until this point in a wide receiver room that is otherwise fairly weak. But the offensive line got better, getting Will Campbell in the first round of the NFL draft to protect Drake May. And then defensively, you have one of the better secondaries in the country with Christian Gonzalez as your cornerback 1. He is slowly making his way up the tier list of NFL corners, and I would arguably put him in the top 10, close to the top 5 after the season he had last year. Overall, I just think this Patriots team has rebuilt fairly quickly and looks like a competitive team already. And against the Saints, even if it is a home game for New Orleans, they're not going to stand much of a chance. If Rhamondre Stevenson returns to form as well, that's going to be a huge issue for the Saints team too, because their run defense last year was one of the worst in the NFL. So Patriots get the win here, dropping the Saints to 0-6. And then it's a road trip to Chicago to face the Bears. And it's going to be an interesting year for Chicago. They're bringing in Ben Johnson, the former offense coordinator from Detroit, to be their head coach. And there's a lot of hype surrounding this Bears team because the Detroit offense last year was so dominant. And the Bears have made so many additions this offseason on the offensive side of the ball. Getting 2 offensive linemen to protect Caleb Williams, getting Luther Burden and Colston Loveland in the NFL draft, along with already having DJ Moore and Roma Dunze. This offense has so much potential. It's just going to be a matter of when it actually can start to take off. Defensively, the linebackers are good. The secondary is good. It's going to be that defensive line that is going to be the major concern. Montez Sweat needs to step it up a little bit if he wants to remain in Chicago. But they also went out and got Grady Jarrett, who I think is going to be a very good addition to this defensive line. So I'm pretty high on the Chicago team, obviously, since I am a Bears fan, but I do think the Bears are overall just the better team compared to the Saints. Maybe this is one that the Saints can steal on the road if the Bears start the season off flat and Alvin Kamara has one of his random games where he goes off for 5 touchdowns at some point in the season and it happens to be against the Bears here. But I don't think the Saints are good enough to beat the Bears on the road here. So they will fall to 0-7.
Then it's a matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we think that they might be one of the most underrated teams coming into next season. The offense is going to be very, very solid with Baker Mayfield and a wide receiver room now consisting of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and their first round draft pick, Emeka Egbuka. Some great route runners in there. And I think that this is going to have the potential for Baker Mayfield to have some ridiculous passing records this season. He's got the chance to throw for a ridiculous amount of yards. I think that as long as the offensive line gives him time, the Buccaneers could have one of the best offenses in the league this season, especially passing wise. So this is going to be a really tough team for the Saints to defend. Offensively, I just can't see the Saints keeping up with this onslaught that's going to be put on by the Buccaneers. So they fall to 0-8 here before a matchup with the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams also going to have a great passing attack led by Matthew Stafford, and they're going to have a wide receiver room that no longer has Cooper Kupp. They replaced him with Devontae Adams, but Adams likely to slot in as wide receiver two for now as Puka Nacua takes over the wide receiver one role. Devontae Adams, a great route runner to take some of the weight off of Nakua's shoulders. I think that they're going to have a very solid team regardless of losing Cooper Kupp. I don't think it's going to end up mattering that much. The Rams are very likely going to be the best team in the NFC West, one of the better teams in the conference. So they're much better than the Saints. Again, it seems crazy to have a team starting 0-9, but that's exactly what we have for the Saints. Just not many games I think they're going to be able to compete in.
And I don't think this last game before their bye week is going to be one that they have a good chance in either. Against the Panthers on the road. Now, the Panthers have been a pretty bad team over the last few years, finishing as the same record as the Saints last year at 5-12. But the Panthers actually made improvements this offseason. They got Tedero McMillan in the first round as a huge weapon for Bryce Young, probably the best weapon he will have in his NFL career, assuming Tedero McMillan pans out. Defensively, their secondary is very strong with Michael Jackson and J.C. Horn coming off of very successful seasons. The defensive line might need to take some steps forward, but they showed some strides last year, and they went out and got a couple good edge rushers in the NFL draft as well, including Nick Scorton. So I think this Panthers team has made a lot of steps forward, and they started to look like a more competitive team towards the end of last year, and I think they will build on that success throughout the season. So on the road, I don't think the Saints will be able to get the win here. So they will go into their bye week 0-10.
Out of the bye week, another in-division matchup. This one with the Falcons. Michael Penix Jr. going to be the starting quarterback for the full season now, and we'll finally get to see if using a first-round pick on him last season actually is going to pan out. The offense, if Penix pans out, is going to be one of the best in the league as well. The defense, a little bit more of a concern, but there's definitely some strengths. The defensive line is very young, so that's one of the things they need to work on developing. But once they get that done, I think the Falcons are going to be a very solid team. They are, in my opinion, better than the Saints, but the Saints have to win a game at some point. I don't think we're going to see an 0-17 team. We also know that the NFC South is one of the most chaotic divisions. I think this time at home, the Saints are going to have a few lucky plays go their way and actually get a win this season, moving to 1-10.
And coming off of that huge first win of the season in the division as well, They are on the road to face the Dolphins, and the Dolphins are a team that we don't think are going to be that good this season. The offense might still be pretty productive. You still have Tyreek Hill, who at his peak can still be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. You have Jalen Waddle as well. That 1-2 punch is also one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. But the concern is with Tua, considering how many concussions he's had over the past few years, and ultimately, you have to take care of your body and your health. And I'm afraid Tua might not be the same player that he once was. And I think that will hurt the Dolphins' chances a little bit on offense. I do think there will be games where he obviously can be the same quarterback that we've seen him be, but it's going to be few and far between. And then defensively, they got some good players in the NFL draft. They got Kenneth Grant from Michigan to be on their defensive line, just a huge human being to plug up those run holes. The linebacker core is okay, but the biggest concern is their secondary. They've had players leave in free agency. They traded players away, including Jalen Ramsey, who they traded to the Steelers to get Minkah Fitzpatrick back. And while he is still a solid player, a safety isn't going to help your secondary a whole lot compared to a corner. Not to mention one of their corners is already out for the season with a injury. So this Dolphins team is not going to be nearly as good as we've seen in the past few years, but I do think they still have the potential to be around a 500 team in the best case scenario. But against the Saints, especially at home, I think the Saints' first win will kind of get to them a little bit. So the Dolphins will ultimately get the win here. And then the following week, it's a rematch with the Buccaneers, this time at Tampa Bay. And Jonah already covered most of the key points for this team. Just a couple other additional things. The running back room is going to be very solid with Bucky Irving, Rachaad White, two really solid backs that they can use. And Baker can use them in the pass game as well. And then defensively, as long as a lot of the guys stay healthy and maybe they can get the most out of Hassan Reddick after he didn't really live up to expectations last year after a phenomenal season in Philly 2 years ago, then this defense is going to be very solid. So I don't think the Saints will be able to beat the Buccaneers this season, especially with Marshawn Lattimore no longer being on the team because he was the Mike Evans stopper. So they will fall to 1-12.
And it's a matchup with the Carolina Panthers, and we saw this team get a lot better near the end of last season. Bryce Young finally started playing like the first round draft pick that he was, let alone the number one overall pick. So I do think that if they can continue that success into this full season, the Panthers are actually going to be a relatively decent team, probably finish somewhere around 500. And I think they are a better team than the Saints. But like we were saying earlier with the Falcons, the Saints are going to win a couple games. The trick is finding them, and they've probably played the Panthers relatively decently on the road. Now you're bringing it back home. You're in a chaotic division in the NFC South. I think the Saints are going to be able to win their second game of the season, moving up to 2-12.
Then they face the New York Jets, and the Jets got Justin Fields during the off season to be the starting quarterback after he's bounced around a bit since leaving the Chicago Bears. And I definitely think he has some upside. Obviously, the rushing ability is the big selling point for Justin Fields. But if he can develop as a passer a little bit in New York, then he might be able to live up to some of those expectations that were set when he was taken in the first round by the Bears. And I think with reuniting him with a former college wide receiver in Garrett Wilson, I think that is really going to help his chances of developing more as a passer. Throw in the fact that Breece Hall is in the backfield still to take some pressure off of Justin Fields if he is in those passing situations consistently, then this offense can be very solid, especially since they have taken offensive linemen in the first round the past 2 seasons. And then defensively, you still have Sauce Gardner, who is one of the best corners in the league, even though it might not show up statistically to the average NFL watcher. But this defense is still going to be fairly solid. And once again, against the Saints team coming off a win, I don't think they will be able to stand much of a chance against this Jets team. So they will fall to 2-13.
Then it's a matchup with the Titans, the owners of the number one pick in this year's NFL draft, who selected Cam Ward out of Miami. And I do think Cam Ward is going to be one of the better quarterback prospects in this draft. There's a good reason that he went number one over. They are probably still going to struggle quite a bit this season. I don't think they have any chance at the division or anything like that. But I do think that compared to the Saints, it's going to be pretty close. The fact that the Saints are going on the road is the main reason that I am going to lean Titans here. But this is another game that the Saints do have a chance of winning.
And then to finish off the year, it is their final division game against the Falcons on the road. And once again, Jonah already hit on most of the key points about this Falcons team. Even though the Saints did pull off the win at home earlier this season, I don't think they will sweep the season series against the Falcons. The offense is just way too explosive with Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. There's no way this Falcons offense would lose to the Saints team twice. I do think the secondary is decent enough to get some stops against the Saints offense that will ultimately struggle throughout the season. And I don't think it's in the cards for Alvin Kamara or Chris Olave to go off in a game that really means nothing to the Saints season. So the Falcons will get the win at home with the Saints finishing 2-15.
Which is significantly worse than their 5-12 record last season. I think at some point this year, Saints fans are probably going to realize that their best bet for competing in the future is getting the number one overall draft pick this season and drafting, as of right now, Arch Manning. We'll see if that ends up actually happening. There's a lot that can go on in college football still, so we're not going to get into the speculation of who will be the number one overall pick, but they're going to need a quarterback. I don't think Tyler Shuff is the franchise guy. The floor for the Saints this year is 0-17. I think they're the only NFL team this season capable of not winning a single game. The ceiling going to be 5-12. We talked about it a few times on different games that the Saints could possibly win. Most of them near the end of the year. You had the Giants one early on. The Vegas over-under is at 5.5. They are favoring the under, so the Vegas over-under seems to be pretty close to that ceiling that we have. I think we're a little bit lower on the Saints than they are. There is chaos in the NFL every once in a while. Some teams win games they absolutely shouldn't. I just don't think it's going to happen 5 times for the Saints this year, which is why we have them at 2-15. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.